Hey everybody, I'm Twotris and today I just wanted to talk about the 9 to 5 and how it absolutely crushes your soul and ways to kind of get out of that. So I just got off the phone with one of my friends who lives over on the East Coast. I think it's like in Boston. And he was telling me that he's not really feeling too great these days, mainly because every day just kind of feels the same. You know, he goes to work and then he comes home. And I guess like a more detailed version of that is, you know, he wakes up, maybe has breakfast or something, does this soul-crushing job, comes back home, maybe does some chores, you know, watches some brain rot, and then kind of repeats the same process all over again. And I think he's in a relationship too on top of it. So even though he's got some stability in his life, stability really isn't everything that you need, I think. You know, a lot of people I know live very boring lives and they kind of like it that way, but I don't really like boring. Boring is one of those things I've always tried to avoid, because when you do the same thing every day, you know, well, for one thing, time just starts to go by a lot more quickly because they start to blend in with each other. You know, last week Wednesday feels like, 3 months ago on a Wednesday, and you're like, what am I doing with my life? I'm not really getting anything out of this. And like on top of that, you kind of deprive yourself of the creative authenticity that you could be searching for, and maybe even like searching for it with by making new friends, if you will. Like for example, like my life isn't really boring at all. I think I have one of the most interesting lives for a poor person. Like I don't have a lot of money, but, you know, I wake up in the morning and I have like a really strange schedule where I work from like 3:30 to like 9 in the evening. So that means like the entire morning is to myself, and then I'm a night owl. So I wake up in the morning and I make my coffee, and usually like I'll make a YouTube video or write a script, or maybe I'll read a book and listen to some good music. I oftentimes put on like this obscure stuff from Jim O'Rourke, who is a musician who lives in Tokyo, and I like to get immersed in that kind of thing. But like every day there's kind of a variety with that 3 hours of my time. And I know that not everybody really has that, but you know, like you do have those free moments in your day, and a lot of people are just too exhausted to really do anything with it, where they just turn on the brain rot and like let themselves just, you know, fade out of their own consciousness. And that to me is just such a, like, I know that people are struggling with this kind of thing, but I've always been motivated to just find variety in my life, and the best way to get variety in life is through hobbies, or honestly I don't even really like the word hobby, but like passions, we'll call them, and other people. And the other thing is, like, you know, when I get off work, you know, I live in the center of Tokyo, so I can go to, you know, Shibuya, or I can go to Akihabara, I can go to like Ebis or, you know, Shinjuku or something. And I've always noticed that, you know, since there are not only Japanese people who go to these bars, but also tourists, you get like a wide variety of people. And for me, what's been like a life changer is, even when I'm kind of in a rut and I'm not sure what the hell to do with myself, you know, meeting other people is a big opportunity to explore somebody else's mind. And this is what happens when you read books, for example. Like a good book, it's almost like you become that person for a moment. But I always like the idea of picking somebody else's brain, somebody who knows about, say, technology or coding or some, you know, esoteric philosophy, and learning how that can make my life better. And there are, you know, there's an endless amount of people. Like as one person, I think you can only really remember like 300 people in total at one given time, and there are 7 billion of us, if not like close to 8 billion of us in the world. And like going to these bars and talking to new people like almost every day, because that's like I love just the socializing aspect. Maybe I'm not as introverted as I claim, guys, but that really makes every day unique and cool. Like another example of this is, I met this guy called I forget his last name, but his name was Oscar, and he's the owner of the YouTube channel La Capitale, which is a cooking channel with like some stupid amount of subscribers, like 9 million, 10 million subscribers. And I remember like we met at a bar this one time, and he was just like a real down-to-earth dude. We were discussing like how to make YouTube videos, what it means to have an audience. And I remember like he believed in me at that time. You know, I just showed up at this bar because I wanted to meet some new people. And sometimes you're going to get those what do you call them, like the stragglers who are just jackasses and really not worth your time. But then you'll have like those life-changing moments where, you know, somebody tells you one piece of information and all of a sudden you're on a new course of creativity. Like I wouldn't have, you know, worked on my YouTube channel quite as much had I not met Oscar from La Capitale. And I know that guy doesn't remember who I am. He likely, you know, he has so many people talking to him all the time that, you know, if I were like, hey dude, remember me, by sending him an email, he'd be like, I'm sorry man, I don't remember. But that doesn't really matter too much to me, because at the very least he was kind enough to, you know, give me some wise words. And after that, at the time I was like 350 subscribers on my main YouTube channel, and I just kind of grinded from that period on for like 2 months, and then I went from like, you know, 300 to 1,000, and then I went from 1,000 to 2,000. And I mean, my channel's not huge or anything, but just, you know, like putting yourself out there, meeting new people, there's motivation to be found. Another cool story is like I was in a different bar in the same area, and I met these two half English guys. They were like half English and half like Israeli or half Palestinian. I don't remember very much, but they were just talking to me about like the wars going on around the world and how they were fed up with it. But it was cool kind of like getting their insight, buying them a beer and asking them why it makes them why it bothers them so much, because I don't really follow geopolitics very much, specifically because it's just too negative. But, you know, they were really nice to me, and they happened to like Elliott Smith, who's one of my favorite musicians. And, you know, they told me that Clementine was their favorite song by Elliott Smith, and I thought like, oh, yeah, that's a pretty good song by Elliott. You know, I never really thought that I'd meet anybody else in the middle of Tokyo who's a big fan, but fuck yeah. And I was really inspired by the conversation, and like later that night, I wrote this song called Golden Town, which is, you know, on my latest album. But the whole song is basically like a story of this one time in my life when I, decided to meet to talk to random people that I didn't know, and that's always the best recipe, I think, for solving your existential crises, is like finding your people, finding your community. But if you can't do that, then just like, you know, create a variety. I know too many people who just kind of get complacent with like that 9 to 5 and just go back and forth between their house. And like, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I had like, you know, self-deletion ideation at one point at my old job, because I wasn't going out enough. I didn't put myself out there, and I had no friends for a period. I mean, I had friends, but I wasn't really like, you know, putting my thoughts out. And I think like, you know, for very deep thinking people, thoughts are almost akin to like poison, where if they stay inside your mind too long and you don't get them out, you almost start feeling mentally ill, because, you know, you can't share them. You can't experience the joy of, you know, connection with other people. And I'm a true believer that you can solve a lot of your, I guess, malaise, your existential malaise, by just talking to other folks who get it. And this is the place to do it, man. Like, if you're not living in a big city and you can't find those places with the tourists, that's one thing. But you can, at the very least, you know, go on the internet and start sharing your ideas. And that's just been like the cool thing about it, because otherwise, like, you fall into this little trap where, you know, the past becomes this thing you wish you still had, and the nostalgia really it really eats at you. Like, take an old video game, for example. I make the example with Ocarina of Time a lot, but, you know, Metal Gear Solid is another game that I really like, and I played that game at least like 15 times, 20 times when I was younger. And every time I played it, you know, I learned a new detail about the story and the plot, and it's really anchored into my being. And I can feel happy thinking about that game and remembering how Solid Snake's voice is like super badass, or the way that, you know, Raiden goes to the big shell and, you know, experiences like a self-transformation that many of us kind of go through in the middle of our lives. But like, if you get too caught up into that, you forget about the future. And this is what I don't like about nostalgia, is it stifles the moment, because you want to live in the past, but you forget about here, you forget about the future. And while it's a happy thing to think about here and there, everything kind of comes down to, you know, enhancing the moment, enriching the current experience, and how can we maximize that? How can we affirm our existence? How can we be, I guess, from a Nietzschean perspective, how do we affirm our existence and get the most out of every moment without wasting it? And I think there are these, this complacence, oh, well, I have enough money, I have this shit job, but whatever, at least there's YouTube, at least I have enough, instant gratification in front of me to, figure out things for a period. But that kind of routine is toxic. I think a little bit of routine is fine, but also enough chaos and enough risk and enough variety, having a little bit of that really thrusts you into the right direction, where you'd be surprised in where your life takes you. And I've been getting a couple of shout outs for these videos for just kind of going on the camera and sharing my thoughts directly, but it's really one of the best ways to connect with everybody. Connection, social connection. Without that, what are we as a species? I think that's how we're going to get out of the 9 to 5, is coming onto the internet, meeting new people, and networking, but not in a corporate way, but artistic networking, we'll call it, and seeing where that kind of leads you in the end. But I suppose I don't really have too much else to say on that today, so thanks so much for watching, and I hope you guys have yourselves a splendid rest of your, it's the evening here, splendid rest of your morning. So, cheers.